Bobby Owsinski's Inner Circle. I'm Bobby Owsinski, and this is a show all about music, music production, and the music business. My guest today is music performance therapist Elisa Di Napoli. First of all, do you meet Spotify's definition of a professional artist? There are 8 million artists on Spotify alone. Now, you look at that and you think, wow, that's a lot of competition. However, Spotify has a way of delineating who is a professional artist and who isn't, and it's pretty easy. 2/3 of all the artists have released less than 10 tracks or less than a full album on Spotify. So right away, that takes them out of the running. And fewer still have 10,000 listens per month. So that leaves us with 165,000 out of 8 million artists who can be considered professional artists, meaning that you have enough material that's out there and that you're actually getting a bare minimum of streams. 10,000 a month across all of your catalog is not all that much. So 98% of the artists on Spotify aren't popular enough to get even 10,000 streams per month. Now, it's possible that you could be more popular on another platform, but chances are if you're popular on Spotify, you're popular on the other platforms as well. It just goes to show you, when you think there's so much competition out there, it's really a lot less than maybe you believe. If you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@bobbyowsinski.com. Also, I'm pleased to announce that the 5th edition of my Mixing Engineer's Handbook is now available. It's totally updated and includes new section on mixing and immersive audio, self-mastering, new mixer interviews, and much more. Get your copy at a special discounted price at bobbyowsinski.com/handbook. That's bobbyowsinski.com/handbook. Now, we all know that the vinyl pressing plants have run out of capacity, and if you place an order now, you might be lucky to get it in 8 or 9 months, which is not acceptable for most artists. That being said, vinyl pressing capacity is about to get a big boost. Memphis Record Pressing is tripling its manufacturing space and installing 36 new presses. Now, this is slated to come online in September, and when that happens, that's certainly going to ease the whole problem of vinyl delivery by a lot. Now, just to give you some idea, right now Memphis Record Pressing, or MRP, currently does about 7 million a year, but soon it will turn out about 125,000 per day, which means it's going to go up to about 45 million. When this happens, MRP will become the largest vinyl manufacturer in North America, which is pretty interesting since it was only founded in 2014 with a few used presses. So it just goes to show you that riding the wave of vinyl happens in many, many spaces and many areas. And it's really good that we're finally seeing some pressing plants taking that plunge, getting new presses, and taking the big pressure off the business. My guest this week is Elisa Di Napoli, who's a holistic life coach, hypnotherapist, author, and performer. Elisa specializes in helping professionals and artists overcome creative blocks and beat stage fright so they can better share their gifts with their audience. She's been a holistic clinical hypnotherapist as well as an NLP practitioner for 2 decades, where her approach combines positive psychology, Eastern philosophy, esoteric Western practices with hypnosis if that's needed, and transformational creative coaching to provide a holistic path to better living. Elyssa is also a singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist, performing under the name Elyssa Vulpes, and she's a best-selling author of Dare to Be Seen. During the interview, we talked about the reasons people get performance anxiety over social media, the different symptoms that can arise, ways to overcome it, and much more. I spoke with Elyssa via Zoom from her studio in New Zealand. Let's start with your background and how you get into the music business. What came first?
Well, I often get the question, and I suppose what came first was music. My first love has always been actually, it started with writing, and I used to write poetry, and then I got into music through poetry because back in the day, there wasn't a lot of interest, at least where I was, for poetry, and instead I thought, well, if no one reads poetry, maybe I should get into music. And actually, then I discovered that I loved music. And after I saw somebody play "Baby, I'm Gonna Leave You" by Led Zeppelin at my high school concert, and I thought, oh yeah, I want to do that. And so then I started writing songs and discovered that I was terrified of performing in public. That was a bit of a problem. And then came the therapy, the hypnotherapy, the coaching, all of that later. But I always kept on making music, throughout my life, in parallel with that, because basically psychology and music are two things I'm really passionate about, and they also sort of feed into each other as well. Because through my clients, I hear a lot of stories, and through also my own therapy, I used a lot of music to heal myself, help myself throughout a life. So I use music for healing, and then I used hypnotherapy to help myself with this particular problem and other problems as well, that I've had in my life, the psychosomatic and the psychological issues. So they're very much intertwined.
Okay, so you discover you have an issue with performing, and that prompted you to get therapy then, right?
Well, I mean, I was already, I've had therapy for a long, long time, all kinds of different therapy for all kinds of different things, but basically for my mental health. And when I realized I had performance anxiety, I didn't know what to do, because even though I was a hypnotherapist at the time, it just didn't occur to me. Like, it's this obvious, it's like you hear these stories of people that are just blind, got blind spot, So for me, it just didn't occur to me to go to a hypnotherapist, until one time when I was talking to a colleague about it, and he was saying, well, you could use hypnotherapy for this, have you not tried it? And I thought, no, I haven't. I tried pretty much everything else, and I haven't tried this. And so I got a bit of help from him, and it did work, but not completely 100%, because I only saw him like a couple of times, And then I thought, wait a minute, okay, there must be more to this, because hypnotherapy is a bit of an art. It's it's only as good as a hypnotherapist. That the help you're going to get really depends on the person that's doing it. And so then I started studying. I started asking other hypnotherapists and kind of looking into it quite a lot to figure out all the different possibilities, all the different possible techniques that there were. And I started focusing on it. And then at the same time, I was actually getting clients to come to see me with this problem, so that I would look at all the, possible, look at all the ways that this problem can kind of surface, and then seeing what kind of treatment works with who. And so this went on and on for quite a long time. And then once I got a really good idea, I thought, okay, I'm going to actually apply this to myself, because I'm pretty terrible at that. Like, I'm really good at helping other people, but when it comes to me, I sometimes expect myself to be above it all and to just be like, oh no, I don't need this. Other people are actually getting better, but I am not applying the same things to myself. So of course I'm not getting better. And so then there was a point where I was like, okay, right, this is silly. I actually know exactly what I need to do. So I started putting that into practice, and I thought, one thing that's going to really help me is to write a book about it and do a course. Because if I do that, then I'm going to be 100% focused on this, and then I have to practice what I preach, Also because I don't want to be one of those people that are like, just saying to other people, do this and do that, and then they don't do it. I mean, it's ridiculous. So that's what I did. And that really was the final kind of brick to build a house, and because of that, I managed to actually overcome the problem. And it doesn't mean that, like I'm not nervous at all, because that's not very natural. Everybody's nervous, when they're performing, but it's more that actually now, rather than being a traumatizing experience every time I go on stage, I actually manage to have fun. And, sometimes I might make a mistake, but now I'm able to just kind of laugh it off, and be like, oh, well, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. And for the most part, I'm having fun, even if I'm not perfect, which is, before it was all about being perfect, which doesn't exist anyway.
I understand the concept of being afraid before you begin to perform. But for many people, that goes away. As soon as you hit that first chord, first notes, sing the first phrase, it goes away. Am I to understand that for many people that doesn't happen?
Yeah, it doesn't happen for everybody. Absolutely not. In fact, for me, it was sort of the opposite. It was more like I was okay at the beginning, and then the more I was on stage, the more I started freaking out, because I either because things were going not the way I wanted them to, or because they weren't going too well. Meaning, basically, I was interfering by becoming self-conscious. With my rational mind, I just started thinking, whether it's a positive thought, negative thought, doesn't matter. It's interfering with the flow of the performance. So therefore, it's distracting you from being in the moment, and you go into your head. And it doesn't matter whether that thought is, "Ooh, look, or maybe, did you hear that amazing passage? That was great. Oh, they're going to think I'm fantastic." Or, "Oh God, they all hate me. Look at that guy's eyes. Oh, he's so distracted and bored." And it doesn't matter what you're thinking. You're not in the moment. You're not in the song. And so it's just not going to be a good performance, and you're not going to have a good time. So to answer that question, yes, this happens to a lot of people, not just me, unfortunately.
Is there one common reason why people get performance anxiety?
Well, there's a variety of reasons. In general, on the low level performance anxiety is normal, right? It's something we have as a kind of evolutionary. There's an evolutionary reason for it, because nobody wants to be rejected, right? If you are rejected by the tribe, so to speak, you don't survive anymore. I mean, back in the day. Now, if you're rejected by an imaginary, crowd, or a crowd in your head that doesn't like you, or a real crowd, it can feel really threatening. So and so that's normal. But when that's excessive, then we have a problem. When that's stopping you from performing, it's stopping you from enjoying yourself. So in that case, we're looking at a variety of causes. It could be that it's the problem, the cause of excessive anxiety comes from a trauma. Now, when I say trauma, people imagine usually these big things, but it could just be, maybe when you were 6 years old and in front of the class, you were everybody was laughing at you because you told a joke that maybe you said something that put you on the spotlight, and maybe the teacher made fun of you, whatever. That could be a traumatic enough to basically associate the experience of being seen with danger. You are rejected, you're humiliated. So trauma is one reason. Another reason is negative mental rehearsal, which basically is when people worry. When people go, "Oh, what if this and that goes wrong? What if," and then the moment you think about that, your brain makes a mental picture of this negative event. And for the brain, it doesn't matter whether it's real or imagined. It's the same. So it reacts as if this is actually happening. These people are actually rejecting you today, right now. And so that can create a huge, again, a negative effect of fight or flight, So these two things are definitely a problem. And also you can kind of learn the behavior as well from other people. Like, this is common with phobias, if like, your mother was always scared of flying or spiders or whatever, you can learn it. That's less common, but there's different causes, and sometimes they can live together, so it could be that you've had a traumatic experience, and then on top of that, you ruminate and worry and catastrophize in your head, anticipating this terrible negative event that will mean that you get rejected by everybody, so that can happen. And then in the moment, if you start having this, if the fight or flight response gets triggered, you can't actually think rationally, because again, this is built in our survival mechanism. If you, back in the day, you were confronted by an enemy and, say a lion, I don't know, and you can't just stop and think, is that lion going to eat me or not? Is that really dangerous? You can't think like that. You just have to run or kill the beast, So it's black and white thinking. So that's what actually happens in the brain, is that the amygdala, the alarm center of the brain, it sends these inhibitory signals. So in other words, it inhibits this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. So what happens is you can't think rationally. You think in black and white terms, life or death. And until you calm down, that is, until the amygdala actually, the alarms get switched off, saying, okay, there's no danger now, you can't think rationally. So affirmations, things like that, they do work, but only when you're calm. So when you're having a panic attack, it's not going to work.
I can understand where, if you're doing a live gig and there's people that you're playing to, that could be intimidating. What happens when you're doing something on social media? You're doing like a YouTube Live, you're doing Facebook Live, something like that. Does that calm you down? Someone that normally would be triggered by performing to people, is that more comfortable, or is it the opposite?
Well, it depends on your internal dialogue, right? Like, what are you saying to yourself in that moment? What are you imagining? Are you imagining that you're talking to your best friend and there's just, your fans are there and they love you and they can't wait to hear from you and, you're comfortable with them? Or are you imagining millions of people watching you, judging you, then whatever you're imagining in the moment is going to change how you feel. And it's going to trigger different emotional responses. So, you could be calm if you're imagining that it's your best friend there. Or you could be totally, having exactly the same panic response as if you were in person facing a big crowd. So it depends what you're saying to yourself and what you're imagining.
When you're performing to an audience that you don't know, you have to win them over. And I can see where someone would panic about that, because you're in a hostile environment until they're not, so to speak. But what if you're actually advanced a little bit in the business where you have fans and you have lots of fans in the audience that immediately pull you in, immediately embrace you when you walk out on stage? Does that alleviate the problem?
Yeah, I would think so. Absolutely. Because it's all about acceptance, feeling safe. When you're accepted, you feel safe. If you feel safe, there's no reason to panic. Really simple, So it's like a feeling safe enough to be vulnerable, to not be perfect, to just be yourself, and to relax into the performance. So you're not actually thinking about yourself, but you're thinking about hopefully you're not thinking at all. You are immersed in the present, really tuned in to the message of the song or the feeling of the instrument that you're playing. That's when you are at your best. Having a little bit of nerves helps, to give the performance energy, because if you totally chill, like if you really don't care, then it's going to be flat. Like I know about that because, in one of my attempts at overcoming this problem, I took beta blockers And it was like being a bit of a zombie, you know. I was like, oh, the audience is there, like a screen on a TV. And I'm just like an automaton going through the emotions, and I don't feel anything, you know, and I don't care. And I don't care what they think. And it's just awful, you know. And if you've ever seen a performer that doesn't care about the audience, if the performer doesn't care, the audience doesn't care. You know, in fact, they might not even like the performance at all.
Are there different permutations of performance anxiety?
Well, it depends if you're meaning like symptomatically. Yeah. Yes, symptomatically, like people have all different kinds of symptoms. You know, they're all the symptoms that have to do with hyperventilation. So basically, hyperventilation is when you are having a panic attack on stage, or before, or even after. So what happens is that if you are in that situation where your amygdala thinks, okay, you're in danger, it will pump adrenaline and cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and in your system. And this is so that if there was a real danger enemy there, you would be fighting it or running away from it. But when you're on stage and you don't have an actual enemy, you're not fighting or running away from anything. Basically these substances, they stay in your body, and they cause, and there's nowhere the energy doesn't get consumed. And so basically you get into a state of hyperventilation. You usually start breathing quite fast and shallow. And you can have a lot of symptoms. Like the symptoms could be from heart pounding to your throat getting all parched, to feeling a sense of unreality, to shivering. You know, it can be so many different things, but they're all symptoms of hyperventilation. So if it's that bad that you're having a panic attack, you could have some or all of these. If, on the other hand, it's not as bad as being in fight or flight, well, thank God it's a little bit less full on, you know, it's easier to treat. But you could have, for example, you could be worrying a lot before the performance. And then, like you said before, you get on stage and it's fine. But that's still really bad for the person because, you know, it can put people off. You know, some people can't sleep at all the night before, or maybe they throw up, or, you know, they have symptoms like irritable bowel symptoms. So that's pretty bad. They might not panic during it, but they kind of have this response before. So there's different permutations in terms of severity, kinds of symptoms, and whether they are having a panic attack during the day of the performance, or whether they're only worrying before. And some people have it after. You know, they've gone through it, it's gone okay, but they just torture themselves with all the mistakes and, oh my God, and what was it? Oh, they hated it, or whatever, all the things they did wrong.
Yeah. You mentioned hyperventilation, which makes me think that breathing techniques are a big part of overcoming this.
Yeah, you're on the ball there. I mean, it's not the only thing, but it's one of the two things that really, really work. So yeah, the two techniques basically that work for this are to do with switching off the alarm center, right? So the alarm center, the amygdala, is connected to the sympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is kind of the opposite. So it's what gets switched on when we relax, when we go to sleep. So that's why, you know, like if you can't fall asleep and have a panic attack at the same time, you know, it's either one or the other. So one of the best ways of stopping of switching off the alarm system is to switch on the parasympathetic nervous system. And one of the ways that you can do that is by breathing diaphragmatically. So what that means is that it's very important that you keep your mouth closed when you do this. And this has got to do with the amount of carbon dioxide and oxygen that can go out of the mouth as opposed to the nose. So you need to keep the mouth closed and breathe in through the nose and take a deep breath. So for example, you could count in your mind, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you hold the breath for a couple of seconds, and then you breathe out for longer, much longer, as long as you can. So it could be maybe 8, maybe it's 10, whatever it is, but you keep your mouth closed. And you need to do this for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, because people usually do it for like 30 seconds and then they're like, oh, it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because you didn't do it long enough. It needs to be 5 minutes, because it takes time to switch off the alarm system. So that's one thing. But the other thing that a lot of people don't know about, I didn't know about either, is that if you imagine the scenario of the lion again, and I was talking about all that energy that you need to have to switch off, to fight or run away from the lion. Afterwards, as soon as the danger is over, what would happen is that you will relax. You're just like, finally, I'm safe again. Time to go to sleep. And that tells the amygdala, okay, the danger is over now. I can switch off. So the trick is to then actually use that energy in an aerobic kind of fashion. So if you do aerobic exercise, like going up and down the stairs 10 times, like jumping jacks, like dancing to your heart's content until your heartbeat actually, goes up. So again, 5 minutes or so before a performance, that's going to help a lot too, because it's basically telling your amygdala, okay, we're fighting this enemy, we are running away, and then so the energy's got somewhere to go, and your cortisol and adrenaline are being used, and then you're going to relax again. So it's those two things. And you could do them together as well, like a combo, like, you could start with the not running, but like, jumping or whatever, getting your heart rate up, and then doing some breathing to calm down even more. And at that point, the third thing you can do, now that you're calm, now you can use positive mental rehearsal, positive self-talk, imagine grounding yourself, imagining what you want rather than what you don't. So like the best performance that you could possibly have, being very connected to the music, all of that. So if you do them in this order, then when you finally get into the stage, you're going to be a lot calmer. And then the other thing about breathing is, say that all of this is okay at the beginning, like, you're not panicking before the performance, but you then start to feel panicky during it. Of course, you can't quite do diaphragmatic breathing because, you are performing, you are talking. But one thing you can do is slow down the breathing by having a one breath, one thought kind of breathing. So say you're talking to the audience, instead of going, you're talking too fast, which a lot of people do when they get nervous, you just take, a breath in and a breath out. Then you take another deep breath in. Then on the breathing out, you walk onto the stage. Then you take a breath in, you look at the people, and then as you breathe out, you talk. And that's going to help not only you feel much calmer, but also it's going to help you think. And it's going to help the audience take in what you've got to say, because people will pay attention, be like, oh, what's this? Actually slowing it down really helps in many ways.
You mentioned that you have a book and a course. Do those cover what you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everything that I'm talking about, like just now, is actually not only in the book and not only in the course, but it's also on a free masterclass that I give, on my website. So that, I'll go in more detail about all of these things, explain them, as much as possible really well, and they're free, so anyone can learn these things, because I think, it should be available to anybody. But then, if you want to know more, or you want to have some guidance, then you can kind of go a little bit deeper, and I explain things a lot and in a lot more detail in the book and in the course.
And your coaching, what does that entail?
So the coaching, there's on one hand coaching exercises that kind of go alongside the hypnosis tracks that are the main meat and potatoes of my course. And also, if a person does these buys the courses or learns how to record their own hypnotic tracks, which is something that I teach in the book, but they're like a bit lost about, okay, which track should I listen to, or what should I focus on? Because, their situation, it might be, they might not be sure what's relevant. There's 10 different hypnosis tracks in my course. It's like, okay, which one should I listen to? Of course, if you listen to all of them, something's definitely going to work, because I cover all possible angles. But if a person's like, well, I don't know which one to do, I don't want to do them all, then, that coaching can help. But it's for guidance, but it's also to get the most out of the hypnosis, because, with the coaching, you're learning to put into practice everything that I am conditioning your subconscious to learn. So, you get the practice in your mind, but then you also have to put things into practice in real life.
So you've produced 12 albums and you do a lot of music.
Yeah.
But you do the music under another name.
Yeah, another name, because, I wish now that wasn't the case, but it's been so long. Like a long time ago, I was like, much younger, 25 years ago. And I was, insecure about this. I wasn't sure, is it appropriate, to have your therapist make music? I mean, I don't see the problem now, but back in the day, I thought, maybe it's not good. And so I had this separation, of myself into Elisa Di Napoli is the therapist and the coach, and then Elyssa Vulpes is the musician and the creative one over there. But I'm actually, hypnotherapy is pretty creative. You can't really do it if you're not creative. But so I split that, and then I became very unhappy with this and thought, this is not right. I am just everything. I'm both these things. Why do I have to be two? But, it was just too late to then mix it all up and change it. And I know I did not want to confuse people either, because I am so interested. I'm interested in so many things in my life as well that, if I wrote on my website all the things I'm interested in, people would be like, what? What's this? This is not, it's not on brand. Oh, I don't know. I'm not very good with the branding side of things. So with music, also I've made different kinds of music all my life as well. And that sometimes it can be a bit strange, but for me, it's just that I'm an artist, and I like music is a tool to express what I want to say. And sometimes I'll write a story about it, and sometimes I'll write a song about it, so, it's not, it doesn't have to be a specific kind of song either. I'm maybe one day I want to write a song that is very, happy-go-lucky. Well, I'm not gonna write in a sort of indie goth, way. I'm gonna do something else, that day. Having said that, obviously it's not like I can write music for everything. I can, there's certain genres that I'm more apt with,
Sure.
Mainly like as every artist. But I wanted to also give your listeners a free copy of my book if they want to grab it. I did make a link just for you called elissadinapoli.com/Bobby, so that if they want to grab a copy, they can, and it's free. They don't have to pay anything for it.
Okay, great. Last question, Elyssa. What's the best piece of advice that maybe somebody imparted to you, or maybe you learned along the way?
Probably the one that comes to mind is think about and focus on what you want, not what you don't, right? Because when you focus on what you don't, well, that's the brain will hear that. For example, if I say to you, don't think about a ambulance on top of a hill on fire, it's like, okay, immediately you've pictured it, because, that's just the way the brain works. It pictures what the objects that your words describe. But if you say to yourself, don't is not an actual object. It's just a negation of an object. So the brain can't visualize, can't make that into something. So when you say, oh, I don't want to be a terrible performer, oh, I don't want to be whatever, I don't want to be fat, I don't know, whatever it is you're thinking, you are visualizing the very thing you don't want. and your brain goes, okay, we're going to go there. That's what we're going now. And so how self-fulfilling prophecies really work. So for me, it's been a struggle because I'm actually quite negative. I mean, I think a lot of us as humans, we're negative because we have to survive. So what do? We scan the environment for all the possible dangers. That's how we've survived all this millennia, right? But then it can become overwhelming. So I tend to think negatively, just like a lot of people. And then all those negative things have, happened in my life and that have taught me, oh, don't do that. Do the opposite. What's the opposite? The opposite is thinking about what you want. Oh, okay. It doesn't mean that you're going to get it, but at least you are doing your best to prime yourself, to condition yourself, to be in a good mindset, And then if it doesn't happen, oh, well. So I've made up this, I always say this, I should have a t-shirt that says, expect the best, accept the rest, expect the best, accept the rest. It's like, okay, well, I'm expecting the best. And then if it doesn't happen, oh, well, no, life isn't perfect. It's okay. What can I learn from the experience,
You can find out more about Elyssa at ElissaDiNapoli.com. That's Elyssa, Elisa, Di Napoli, DINAPOLI, Elyssa Di Napoli, all one word.com. Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@BobbyOwsinski.com. To listen to other episodes of Bobby Owsinski's Inner Circle, go to BobbyOwsinski.com, select the podcast tab, or go to BobbyOwinnerCircle.com, or you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, Mixcloud, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, TuneIn Radio, Radio Public, and Podbean. At BobbyOwsinski.com and BobbyOwinnerCircle.com, you'll also find a sign-up form for my newsletter and for alerts for new podcasts. This is Bobby Owsinski. I will see you next time.